Okay, continuing with Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. We're on rule number 2. This next section of rule number 2. And rule number 2 is take care of yourself like you're taking care of somebody who you actually care about, essentially. This section of rule number 2 is chaos and order, personality, female and male. This is a pretty long section. I think it's going to be kind of interesting. I think the crazy neighbors down there is going. The crazy one guy. Hundreds of people live around here. There's one guy that's out of his mind on drugs. He's like a drug dealer that lives right over there. Everybody knows he's a crazy drug dealer, and I'm just flabbergasted. How is this guy not on the streets? I mean, how is this guy on the streets and not in jail? Hawaii, Honolulu would be the only place where they would let this guy, like, I guess he must be on ankle or something. He's the craziest, druggiest. It's just like, why is this guy let to yell outside people's apartment windows? And around children, he yells about the most horrible things. I'm reading a book. It's not that bad. But anyways, it's not about me. This is about Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for 12 rules for life. Not 12 rules for junkies outside my window. Anyways, chaos and order, personality, female and male. Chaos and order are two of the most fundamental elements of lived experience. Two of the most basic subdivisions of being itself, but they're not things or objects, and they're not experienced as such. Things or objects are part of the objective world. They're inanimate, spiritless, they're dead. This is not true of chaos and order. Those are perceived, experienced, and understood to the degree that we all understand them as personalities. And that is just as true as the perceptions, experiences, and understanding of modern people as their ancient forebears. It's just that moderners don't notice. Order and chaos are not understood first, objectively as things object, and then personified. This would only be the case if we perceived objective reality first, and then inferred intent and purpose. But that isn't how perception operates, despite our preconceptions. Perceptions of things as tools, for example, occurs before or in concert with the perception of things as objects. We see what things mean just as fast or faster than what we see what they are. Perception of things as entities with personality also occurs before perceptions of things as things. This is particularly true of the actions of others, living others, but we also see the non-living objective world as animated with purpose and intent. This is because the operation of what psychologists have called the hyperactive agency detector within us. We evolved over millennia within intense social circumstances. This means the most significant elements of our environment of origin were personalities, not things, objects, or situations. So those are the most important thing of our ancestors were each individual personalities. The personalities we have evolved to perceive have been around in predictable form and in typical hierarchical configurations forever. For all intents and purposes, they have been male or female, for example, for 1 billion years. That's a long time. The division of life into its twin sexes occurred before the evolution of multicellular animals. It was in a still respectable 1/5 of that time that mammals who take extensive care of their young emerged. Thus, the category of parent in our child has been around for 200 million years. That's longer than birds have existed. That's longer than flowers have grown. It's not 1 billion years, but it's still a very long time. It's plenty long enough for male and female and parent and child to serve as vital and fundamental parts of the environment to which we have adapted. This means that male and female and parent and child are categories, for us, natural categories, deeply embedded in our perceptual, emotional, and motivational structures. Our brains are deeply social. Other creatures, particularly other humans, were crucially important to us as we lived, mated, and evolved. Those creatures were literally our natural habitat, our environment. From a Darwinian perspective, nature, reality itself, the environment itself, is what selects. The environment cannot be defined in any more fundamental matter. It is not mere inert matter. Reality itself is whatever we connect with when we are striving to survive and reproduce. A lot of that is other beings, their opinions of us, and their communities, and that's that. Over the millennia, as our brain's capacity increased and we developed curiosity to spare, We became increasingly aware of and curious about the nature of the world, what we eventually conceptualize as the objective world outside the personalities of family and troop. And outside is not merely unexplored physical territory. Outside is outside of what we currently understand. And understanding is dealing with and coping with, and not merely representing objectively, but our brains have been long concentrating on other people. Thus, it appears that we first began to perceive the unknown, chaotic, non human world with the innate categories of our social brain. That makes sense? And even this is a misstatement. When we first began to perceive the unknown, chaotic, non animal world, we used categories that had originally evolved to represent the pre human animal social world. Our minds are far older than mere humanity. Our categories are far older than our species. Our most basic category, as old in some sense as the sexual act itself, appears to be that of sex, male and female. We appear to have taken the primordial knowledge of structured, creative opposition and begun to interpret everything through its lens. Order, the known, appears symbolically associated with masculinity, as illustrated in the aforementioned yang of the Tao's yin-yang symbol. This is perhaps because the primary hierarchical structure of human society is masculine, as it is among most animals, including the chimpanzees, who are our closest genetic and arguably behavioral match. It is because men are, and throughout history have been, the builders of towns and cities, the engineers, stonemasons, bricklayers, and lumberjacks, the operators of heavy machinery. Order is the God the Father, the eternal judge, ledger keeper, and dispenser of rewards and punishments. Order is the peacetime army of policemen and soldiers. It's the political culture, the corporate environment, and the system. It's the they, and you know what they say. It's credit cards, classrooms, supermarket checkout lineups, turn-taking, traffic lights, and the familiar routes of daily commuters. Order, when pushed too far, when imbalanced, can also manifest itself destructively and terribly. It does so as the forced migration, the concentration camp, and the soul-devouring uniformity of the goose step. I don't know what a goose step is, but it sounds like it's uniform. Chaos, the unknown, is symbolically associated with the feminine. This is partly because of all things we have come to know when we're born. Originally, all of the unknown, just of all beings we encounter when we're born, are mothers. Chaos is mater, origin, source, mother, materia, the substance from which all things are made. It is also what matters, or what is that matter. The very subject matter of thought and communication, in its positive guise, chaos is possibility itself, the source of ideas, the mysterious realm of gestation and birth. As a negative force, it's the impenetrable darkness of a cave and the accident by the side of the road. It's the mother grizzly, all companion to her cubs, who marks you as potential predator and tears you to pieces. Have you ever seen a bear? I saw one once in a tree. It wasn't a grizzly bear, it was a cinnamon bear. It's in New Mexico. Chaos, the eternal feminine, is also the crumbling force of sexual selection. Women are choosy maters, unlike female chimps, their closest animal counterparts. Most men do not meet female human standards. It is for this reason that women on dating sites rate 85% of men as below average in attractiveness. Wow. Oh man, it just makes me feel worse about my wasted youth. It is for this reason that we all have twice as many female ancestors as male. Imagine that all women who have ever lived and averaged one child. Now imagine that half the men who have ever lived have fathered two children, if that had any, while the other have fathered none. It is woman as nature who looks at half of all men and says no. For the men, that's a direct encounter with chaos, and it occurs with devastating force every time they are turned down for a date. Human female choosiness is also why we are very different from the common ancestor we shared with our chimpanzee cousins. While the latter are very much the same, women's proclivity to say no more than any other force has shaped our evolution into the creative, industrious, upright, large-brained, competitive, aggressive, domineering creatures that we are. It is in nature as a woman who says, "Well, bucko, you're good enough for a friend, but my experience of you so far has not indicated the suitability of your genetic material for continued propagation." The most... Yeah, there's that, but he kind of leaves out it is the man's job to always initiate physical contact. And so from somebody like me, even if you're on the position of a date and intimate with women, it's the man to initiate each step of contact. That's something that I didn't understand. But this isn't about me. So. Okay. I shouldn't have shared that probably. The most profound religious symbols rely for their power in large part on the underlying fundamental bipartisan conceptual subdivision. The Star of David is, for example, the downward pointing triangle of femininity and the upward pointing triangle of the male. It's the same for the yoni and the lingam of Hinduism, which come covered with snakes, are ancient adversaries and provocateurs. The Shiva Linga is depicted with snake deities called the Nagas. The ancient Egyptians represented Osiris, god of the state, and Isis, god of the underworld, as twin cobras, with their tails knotted together. The same symbol was used in China to portray Fuxi and Nuwa, creators of humanity and of writing. The representation in Christianity are less abstract, more like personalities, but the familiar Western images of the Virgin Mary with the Christ child and the Pieta both express the female-male dual unity, as does the traditional insistence of the androgyny of Christ. It should also be noted, finally, that the structure of the brain itself is at a gross morphological level appears to reflect this duality. This, to me, indicates the fundamental beyond the metaphorical reality of this symbolically feminine-masculine divide, since the brain is adapted by definition to reality itself. That is, reality conceptualized in this quasi-Darwinian manner. Alcoa Goldberg, student of the great Russian neurophysiologist Alexander Luria, has proposed quite lucidly and directly that the very hemispheric structure of the cortex reflects the fundamental division between novelty, the unknown or chaos, and routinization, the known order. He doesn't make reference to the symbols representing the structure of the world in reference to this theory, but that's all the better, an idea to be more credible when it emerges as a consequence of investigation in different realms. We already know all of this, but we don't know we know it, but we immediately comprehend it when it's articulated in a manner such like this. Everyone understands order and chaos, world and underworld, when it's explained using these terms. We all have a palpable sense of the chaos lurking under everything familiar. That's why we understand the strange, surreal stories of Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, The Lion King, and The Little Mermaid, and Beauty and the Beast, with their eternal landscapes as known and unknown, world and underworld. We've all been in both places many times, sometimes by happenstance, sometimes by choice. Many things begin to fall into place when you begin to consciously understand the world in this manner. It's as if the knowledge of your body and soul falls into alignment with the knowledge of your intellect. And there's more. Such knowledge is prescriptive as well as descriptive. This is the kind of knowing what that helps you know how. This is the kind of is from where you can derive an ought. The Taoist juxtaposition of yin and yang, for example, doesn't simply portray chaos and order as the fundamental elements of being. It also tells you how to act. The way, the Taoist path of life, is represented by, or exists on, the border between the twin serpents. The way is the path of proper being. It's the same way as it was referred to in Christ in John chapter 14, verse 6. I am the way and the truth and the life. The same idea is expressed in Matthew chapter 7, verse 14. Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that found it. We eternally inhabit order, surrounded by chaos. We eternally occupy known territory, surrounded by the unknown. We experience meaningful engagement when we mediate appropriately between them. We are adapted in the deepest Darwinian sense, not to the world of objects, but to the meta-realities of order and chaos, yang and yin. Chaos and order make up the eternal, transcendent environment of the living. To straddle that fundamentally duality is to be balanced, to have one foot firmly planted in order and security, and the other in chaos, possibility, growth, and adventure. When life suddenly reveals itself as intense, gripping, and meaningful, when time passes and you're so engrossed in what you're doing you don't notice, it is there and then that you are located precisely on the border between order and chaos. The subjective meaning that we encounter there is the reaction of our deepest being, our neurological and evolutionary grounded instinctive self, indicating that we are ensuring the stability but also the expansion of habitable, productive territory of space that is personal, social, and natural. It's the right place to be in every sense. You are there when and where it matters. That's what music is telling you too. When you're listening, even more perhaps when you're dancing, when it's harmoniously layered patterns of predictability and unpredictability making meaning itself well up from the most profound depths of your being. Chaos and order are fundamentally elements because every lived situation and every conceivable lived situation is made up of both. No matter where we are, there are some things we can identify, make use of, and predict, and some things we neither know nor understand. No matter who we are, Kalahari Desert dweller or Wall Street banker, some things or Kalahari Desert dweller or Wall Street banker, some things are under our control and some things are not. That's why both can understand the same stories and dwell within the same confines of the same eternal truths. Finally, the fundamental reality of chaos and order is true for everything alive, not only for us. Living things are always to be found in places that can master, surrounded by things and situations that make them vulnerable. Order is not enough. You can't just be stable and secure and unchanging, because there are still vital and important new things to be learned. Nonetheless, chaos can be too much. You cannot long tolerate being swamped and overwhelmed beyond your capacity to cope while you're learning what you still need to know. Thus, you need to place one foot in what you have mastered and understood, and the other in what you are currently exploring and mastering. Then you have positioned yourself where the terror of existence is under control and you are secure, but where you are also alert and engaged. This is where there is something new to master in some way that you can be improved. That is what meaning is to be found. That was from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules from Life. That was from rule number 2, Chaos and Order. My name is Gregory Brandt. If you enjoyed my reading, click the thumbs up button and go ahead and check out my own book and my other channels and my other videos. And thanks.